Okay, hey everyone. We're going to get started with webinar in just a minute, but I wanted to make a quick announcement. Some of you were able to make it out to Octane. It was amazing to see you. And we actually had a daily raffle for different Lego sets. We raffled off Infinity Gauntlet, a Darth Vader helmet, and a Chewbacca. Those were all extremely popular, and so we wanted to make sure that our online audience also had an opportunity to win one of these really cool sets. So what we're going to do is, after the conclusion of the webinar today, we're going to draw one winner from the attendees today. We'll reach out to you and let you know that you've won, and we'll be sending a Lego set out to you. So we'll get started in just a minute, but just wanted to make that quick announcement. Okay. All right. Let's get started. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how to get Okta's full potential with the help of Torii. My name is John Baker, and I'm here with Rajiv Menon, and we're going to be taking you through this discussion about better together with Torii and Okta. A couple of housekeeping items. We cannot see you, we cannot hear you. Your microphones and cameras are automatically set off. But throughout the course of this presentation, if you have any questions or something you'd like to know more about, please feel free to ask those through the questions feature within the webinar platform. And we'll have some time at the end of the webinar where we're going to be able to talk about all of those. Now, a little bit about today. Like I said, we're talking about Okta and Torii. If you're here, you likely use Okta. It's probably a core part of your company, of your identity management system. So we're going to talk today about how you can get more out of Okta. And there's a couple of different ways you can go about seeing those kind of improvements. We're going to talk about how you can discover more applications, as much as twice as many applications, so you can bring those into the fold. We're also going to talk about how you can gain more adoption within Okta. And finally, maybe most importantly, we're going to talk about how you can actually save a lot of money through this process. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Rajiv. And I want to give a quick introduction for Rajiv. Um, Rajiv is a great guy. We love having him here at Torii, and he has been working in the space with identity management for years, basically since the beginning of this industry was a thing. And he's been helping IT professionals specifically with dealing with SaaS management here at Torii for years now. So without further ado, Rajiv, I'm going to hand it off to you and let you take it from here.
Thanks, John. Much appreciated. And happy to do the demo here for you today. Just going to share my screen and we can get started. So great, I've shared my screen here. So we're just going to start here on the Insights page. And I'm going to introduce Torii, market's leading SaaS management platform. And we're going to help you manage every single SaaS app in your stack today, helping automate your SaaS operations, improve your security, and optimize spend across all your software. So having an effective SaaS management strategy means that we need to know about all the apps that are being used across our stack, not just the apps that we have in SSO. What do we have in SSO? What's the usage of those apps? But also, what do we not have in SSO? And what else can we bring in? What are all the apps that we're purchasing? Both apps that are flowing through your standard procurement processes, as well as applications that may just be expensed, outside of that process. And typically what we see is there's a pretty big gap between those numbers initially and, bringing that in much closer to what your contracted cost is, realizes a lot of savings. Other aspects are looking across and seeing what, essentially, the most popular apps in your stack are, Do we have similar applications that are in use where we can retire some of these applications? Where can we improve allocation of licenses? When contracts are coming up for renewal, and what is the optimal licensing mix for all of these applications? So I'm going to jump across. I can see over here in this environment, I have, a company with almost 497 employees, 310 applications, and we have quite a bit of spend across our SaaS stack. So I'm going to dive in over here and I jump to the applications page, and I can see that, I have quite a large number of apps here, 310 applications. Now, Torii leverages a very sophisticated discovery process where we use more than 7 different methods to discover applications that are both within your IDPs as well as outside of the IDPs. And we use methods like, for example, over here, you can see there are direct integrations to applications. You can see that we have IDP-based integrations here. We also have marketplace integrations where you'll see applications that are discovered when they use things like login with Google, connected with Slack, connected with Teams. Something that's very unique to Torii is we'll do discovery off of MDM platforms that you have, whether it's Jamf or Intune or Kanji. We can do app discovery off the inventories in those different MDM platforms. It's very powerful. And Torii also has a browser extension that can essentially be deployed to the endpoints to pick up applications that you're logging into with your corporate login credentials. Now, you probably have, you may have hundreds of apps in your IDP, but typically what we see in most of the customer environments is customers are finding that they have 3 to 4 times as many apps outside of their IDP as they do in their IDP. So let's take a look at this environment. So you can see that I have some filters built out here, and we have 310 applications. But if I switch to a filter that I've built here, which is essentially identifying applications that are not in my SSO and are not sanctioned. So these are things that IT and security don't necessarily have visibility of. I can see that I have 249 results here. And these are a combination of applications that have been connected by business owners through integrations or added manually or picked up, in one of my expense or finance feeds, or one of, the social OAuth discovery methods. And you can see that we have 249 apps here. Some of these are, being discovered. Some of these are in review. And I also can identify, who I need to go and contact about these apps to review them further. Now, proactively identifying these, is also an opportunity, and I'll show you this in a workflow later on how to, increase the number of apps we have under SSO control, because many of these applications we could probably put into our IDP. So if we take a look here at another angle here, where I'm going down to take a look at apps that I've discovered in my MDM, but are not in my SSO. Now here I have some sanctioned apps because the MDM obviously does give you a layer of control, but some of these are not actually in Okta just yet. And we can see that the MDM source has picked up some of these applications that, I may not have visibility to in my IDP. You can see that we have some popular applications over here. And again, I have the ability to go and see very easily who I need to contact about these applications. Now, we're able to wrap all these up in a workflow so that we can proactively get identified and notify the Okta and relevant security teams to streamline the process on how we get these applications in, more effectively manage our SaaS stack. So we're going to take a look here we're going to drill into one of these applications, and I'm sorting over here on this page by my most expensive apps. So somewhat unsurprisingly, Salesforce is at the top. So we drill into that application over here. We can see that, lots of red, certainly, and not really enough blue here. I can see that my usage over here is quite low, but I can see that I'm actually spending quite a lot of money for the app, both in like active contracts as well as, expense value. And I can see across all the different license types, I can see quite a lot of inactivity, lots of orange, unused licenses that are purchased and assigned, but they're really just not used. This is really a single view across all the data we've collected from the app across all the different sources. You can even see the extension is there. And, you're also able to see things like what are the security certifications and compliance the vendor has. So you can see that they have SOC 2, ISO, GDPR. You can see the relevant people that we need to contact, a complete view across the app. And we're going to dive into more of the licenses stuff in a second here. But you can see across the top that we have a complete view of the application in terms of being able to look across the information that we have, combination of fields that we bring in automatically, as well as fields that you can create, the users, all the sources that they've come in from, contracts, and the expenses. I'm going to jump across now to the licenses view as we go one layer deeper beyond just simply usage of the application themselves and start looking at how the different licenses that you've actually purchased are used within that application. So I'm going to pick one of our favorites here, which is going to be Office 365. I can find it on this list here. There we go. I have lots of apps here. So over here, you can see I've expanded the Office 365 tile. And for any application that you connect through an integration, Torii will, depending on what the vendor provides, be able to bring back the different types of licenses within that app. So you can see that we have a wide range of different licenses in our Office subscription here. And depending on the capabilities of the API, essentially, we'll be able to bring back the total number of licenses, what we see as active at that license tier, what's inactive, and what you may have unassigned. Now, I'm going to pick on the E3s and the E5s over here, but we have a large number of licenses that we've purchased. And we actually have quite a bit of inactivity at both of the tiers. So we can see that we've essentially got a lot of waste over here, and we can see that there's quite a bit of projected savings that we can get from our Office licenses. Here, so we scroll across to the top. We're going to take a look at recommendations. So lots of data over here. Now, to make it easy to comb through these recommendations or through the data, essentially Torii will curate popular or easy to extract savings across your license stack. So you can see over here, it's picked out the two of the easier ones to go after, essentially, picking on Salesforce, where we can reclaim Salesforce licenses. It's projected some savings on, how we can reallocate some of these licenses for us. And this kind of helps you target exactly where we're going to go after savings. Jump across here, 2 clicks to the renewals page. So this reflects essentially a view of all of the contracts that we've brought into the system in Torii. So the way that contracts get in, essentially, some customers may have a contract management system, and we can set up an integration where the contract management system will push data to Torii about the contracts. Many customers are coming into SaaS management, essentially managing renewal dates and so on, simply using a spreadsheet. And we're able to also import the data if you're doing it that way. If you've got some kind of a spreadsheet, we essentially have a template. We can help you get the data into the system. You can also leverage our AI capabilities. So anybody with a Torii account can essentially email contracts and invoices to contracts@toriihq.com, and we're using our AI, we'll extract all of the relevant data out of the contract. So you can either email, and you can use that same approach if you just want to drop contract files into the tile over here. Essentially, we can extract the data out using AI. Now, once you have your contracts in, we're going to visualize when the renewals are all coming up. We're going to categorize all of the applications for you. And we're going to build out a nice renewal calendar that helps you prioritize exactly how you're going to go after your savings. Now, in the renewals calendar, you're going to get some important bits of information pointed out to you. Not only are you going to see when the renewal is coming, But essentially, you're going to be able to see, you're going to be able to identify things like, does this application have an auto renewal? What is the deadline that I need to cancel that auto renewal for? So that you can very easily prioritize, and you'll be able to create automations to essentially automate your procurement process based on all this data. And I jump across to the renewal summary. As you get more data in the system, you're able to visualize more essentially about, the more data that you have, you're going to be able to visualize your performance over time. So over here, you can see a very nice renewal summary that's broken down by year, and you can see different buckets. You can see essentially, for the year, like, what are the applications that are not renewing? What are the applications that, are coming up for renewal? Where have I had a cost decrease? Where am I saving through apps that, potentially we've closed? Where are we seeing increases in costs for apps? What is the increase in cost from new contracts? Right? We can see a kind of a summary for the year. So you can see into 2023, I'm going to pick on the number here. You can see for apps not renewing this year, which is at the top, you can see it's $223. But after I implemented Torii, you can see that that's improved. So we were able to not renew a larger number of apps by the end of 2024 by wrapping Torii around our renewal process. As you can see that, I've almost got 1.7 million in savings here in this environment. And you're very easily able to sift through the data. For example, I'll select cost increased over here. You can drill through each of those dimensions, and we can see things like the aggregate cost from year to year, the difference in value, difference in percentage, and we can link through to all the different contracts. You're also able to very easily extract data from these different views, right, to a CSV file. So you can essentially put it into whatever tool that you like. Now, the contracts view is similar to the applications view that we saw previously. You have the ability to essentially, think of it as a dynamic database where you can create views depending on how you want to actually visualize the data. Actually, over here, I'm looking at contracts that are in review. Over here, I'm looking at the contracts that I've closed recently. So these views can be customized essentially to however you want to look at the data, and there are a wide range of fields that you can use to kind of build out these filters. And again, the same, once you build these different reports and visualizations, very easy to extract the data out of Torii using a CSV. So I'm going to jump across now to the workflows. And I've created some workflows specifically for the webinar. Right? And we'll start essentially with, we were just looking at the cost. So, there's an example over here. Torii's got a wide range of workflows. We'll cover some of those. But over here, we've got essentially an application-centric workflow, and I'm triggering it based on the percentage increase in expenses, actual spend, over and above the contract spend. So what should I be spending, right? If what I'm spending actually is 10% more than what I should be spending, this workflow will kick off. It will send essentially a Slack approval with all of the details relevant to the application initially to the application owner. And I've got a two-step approval here. If that step is approved, essentially I send it across to somebody else to take a look at. And I can add additional steps in that workflow very easily across all the different applications. I can add if then else branches to it. But this is an example of a workflow that's, centric to the application itself and the cost. That allows me to proactively manage and control cost related to an application. So we'll go into something that relates directly to Okta over here. So we have a detecting shadow IT workflow here. So typically, most processes to essentially assess and get apps into your identity system are typically pretty manual these days, right? It's very ad hoc. Application team comes to the SSO team wanting to integrate an app. So we're flipping the model a little bit over here. We're proactively discovering apps letting the key stakeholders know that, hey, here's an application that certain people have started using that essentially is not an Okta. So here my trigger is different than the other one. It fires whenever Torii has discovered a new app across any of the sources that we're connected to. Now, in this case, I've added an if-else branch, and I'm saying that if the sources does not contain Okta, so if Okta is not the actual source, right? Because if Okta is the source, then I'm not really going to do anything. But if Okta is not the source, then immediately I'm firing it off to one of the stakeholders saying, hey, a new application has been discovered that's not in Okta. Would you like to review feasibility to put it in Okta? And if the first person, the first approver says yes, then I'm changing the application state and I'm putting it to in SSO review. So let's determine if this can be enabled for SSO. And I'm firing off a human task to the SSO team to actually review and integrate the app into Okta if possible. If the SSO team determines that it is possible, so they're going to approve the request and we're going to fully sanction the app. If the SSO team, on the other hand, determines that, hey, we're not going to be able to put this in SSO, then I still approve the app, but I'm approving it with a yellow. And I'm saying that it's sanctioned, but it's a non-SSO app. So let's proactively keep an eye on it. So this is an example of how to really streamline the process of how you get applications into SSO, and essentially it encourages or pushes, gets more apps into your SSO. So let's cross here. And let's take a look at another example. So I'm going to go through to one of the license ones. So previously we looked at how we had a lot of waste in our Office 365 licenses. So over here, I've managed to create a workflow to look for that. So I'm proactively looking for my Office E3 licenses. I might just enable the E5 as well. So in this case, the trigger is license not in use. Now, if for example, in this case, I may not want to just disable the app or take the license away for everybody. I'm actually checking to see that if I detect a license is not in use and the person is not in leadership, because people in leadership can get away with not using apps and still having their license, I'm then reaching out to the user. I'm not just taking the license away automatically. Essentially, I'm reaching out to the user and I'm asking them whether we can reclaim the license, and giving them an opportunity to say, hey, look, it's a good idea. You can put my license back in the pool, or no, I'd actually like to keep this license. And if they choose to allow me to revoke the license or reclaim it and put it back in the pool, I'm actually not doing it directly with the app. In this case, I'm actually calling out to Okta, and we're removing the user from the Okta group that entitles the license. So we're doing the management of those licenses, essentially, in this case, through the Okta integration. And Okta is managing that part of it. But this is an example of how we could essentially leverage Torii and Okta together. I'm going to show you one more example before I hand it back to John. And we're going to jump across actually to the access requests and the access request policies in this case. So here, I'm going to show you an example of how Torii has a very nice access request catalog. And, much like the workflows that we just showed you, you can create a highly visual workflow to also manage a request process for apps that Torii has found. So you're able to define very easily, based on the apps that have been discovered, which ones you want to visualize in this catalog. And behind this, you can map out a request process using a Torii workflow. Again, the trigger will be different. So if we jump into this one, the trigger is different. This is an access request that is triggered from this catalog I just showed you here. The user requests an app. We can set up, essentially, in this case, this is a email-based approval step, slightly different than the Slack ones I've been using. We can also set it up to be Slack, but in this case, it's going to be an email that looks like this. Very easy to change that toggle. They can also be in Slack. Now, in this case, if I choose to grant access to the app, which actually happens to be Torii, which is an app that we have set up in our Okta SSO, what I'm doing over here is I'm actually sending a webhook trigger to Okta so that Okta can do the app assignment, and we're integrating to Okta through their API. So we're using the Torii app catalog essentially as a front end to Okta, and we're able to do the app assignment within Okta through the API. And we've just configured an API call, which we've actually got documented here in our developer community, and we have a few different Okta examples there as well. So I am now going to pause and hand it back to John, who I believe has some questions.
Hey, all right. Thank you so much, Rajiv. Yes, we have a number of questions. I just wanted to highlight some of the stuff that you're talking about there. When I think about Tori and Okta together, I think about increasing breadth and increasing depth, about expanding that visibility, bringing more things into the fold, and then extending the capabilities of what you can do with all that information and those applications. And so kind of on that second point, I really like this question. I wanted to bring it out first. We've got someone here who's asking about they only have Okta as an SSO. And so what benefits can they gain with Tori at that tier?
That's a great question. So we actually have quite a number of customers who have very similar scenario, right? And the benefit there is, if you're kind of on that basic Okta SSO tier, you're really just using it to sign on to apps and perhaps like some basic skim capabilities. Now, if you augment that with Tori, essentially you're gonna get the ability to manage the entire user lifecycle, beyond the basic skim for the small number of apps that you probably got it connected with. So you will be able to create very sophisticated multi-criteria workflows using the user meets criteria, that reach into, not just Okta, but also, all the different lifecycle attributes that you may have mapped from your HR system. So you can have a fully automated onboarding, offboarding process that triggers off of states in HR. We'll have automatic triggers you can take advantage of, user joins, user left. You will be able to essentially trigger off of attribute changes within either Okta or your HR system. So what do I do if a person's job title changes? If Rajiv changes his job from, sales to marketing, then what kind of entitlements do I need to push out to him? You'll be able to manage workflows like that. And then you will be able to step into also the full application lifecycle management, right? So how do I, even if I'm only using the basic SSO tier, how do I leverage the application meets criteria, new app discovered workflows to essentially proactively push more apps into my SSO? How do I increase my security posture by being able to block unsanctioned apps, which, especially is prevalent if you also have, Google as your collaboration. If the app is not an Okta and it's a Google SSO, a Google OAuth app with high risk, you may want to block it proactively. You can manage all of that. And then obviously the license management. How do I leverage what I'm already doing with Okta today and be able to proactively essentially remove users from apps when they're no longer, meeting the license? And then obviously we have the contract management type workflows to automate your procurement, and something we've recently introduced, real-time app events.
Yeah, so the short answer is if you just have Okta SSO, is it worth it? Holy cow, yes.
That's right.
Simplify. Now, I'm glad you actually called that out. We had a couple of questions as soon as the screen came up. A couple of people were asking to know more about these real-time app events. Maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. That's a great question. In fact, I do have even a workflow that I've created for that, which probably will illustrate the example. Let's take a look at it. So real-time app events were introduced to pick up events in real time, currently supported for both Okta and Google, right? So over here, I have a few different events that I can pick up. So in this case, right, we are picking up via subscription in real time events where users are being deactivated. So this allows me to make my offboarding process completely seamless. So when I deactivate a user in Okta, I may have some things happening in Okta, but then I've still got, as you saw in this environment, 200 plus apps that are not in Okta. So when this happens in real time, essentially I can notify, one or more stakeholders. Somebody is about to offboard. Do we want to trigger the offboarding process? And essentially what I can do is I can, in just a couple of workflow steps here, I can start the employee offboarding process in 200 plus applications in real time. From the moment that user is actually marked as deactivated in Okta, not only does the Okta, the processes that you have configured in Okta handle all the SSO apps, but just in these two workflow steps, we essentially can then synchronize that to handle offboarding for all of the apps that you actually have found assigned to that user in your stack. And that, is going to be audited, and it's going to help you improve your SOC 2 compliance and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. So kind of talking about that, I know earlier we were talking about how we're kind of flipping that script, and it used to be like the application team comes the identity, and you try to work out integrating these applications. How Torii is really operating as a fail safe in some way to kind of catch those apps that people are not having those conversations about proactively, which, if we're being honest, is a lot of the time, if not most of the time. We have a question here related to managing these shadow IT apps, these unsanctioned apps. Is there a way that Torii can help with blocking access to applications? Maybe they've reviewed and they don't want them in the ecosystem. What can Torii do about that?
Absolutely. I'll show you this in two parts. So we'll quickly go back to our shadow IT workflow. And you can see here, when we discover a new app, if the source is not Okta, what I'm doing over here, right, is what I can do is essentially I can add a step here, and I can change the state of that application to closed. And assuming that I'm using Google, I have a setting here that allows me to block access to apps proactively, essentially when I set the state in Torii to close. So if I add that workflow step that I just added where, hey, if this is not an SSO app and I reject it right off the bat based on the risk level, and I enable this setting over here, then I'm automating the way that I can actually block access to these OAuth apps that may be risky. But I'm also putting a gated kind of process around it. I'm not doing it as a blanket situation. I'm getting Torii to actually set it to closed, and I can do that either manually or I can do that in a workflow. And if I enable this, it's going to block the OAuth apps automatically.
Awesome. Yeah, that's so powerful and really important with I'm sure that keeps a lot of security and identity teams up at night, is just knowing that there are these apps out here and your employees, doesn't matter what you send out in a memo or in a policy, people just sign up for the apps that they want. So having that layer of
Yep,
protection is so important.
it is definitely very prevalent in environments where you have lots of people using the social connections.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I know we are right up against time. I actually do want to ask a couple more questions here. They're really good, but now we're going to kind of transition over to, we had a lot of questions that were asked about Torii more broadly. And so I wanted to say, for those of you who have to jump, understand, we appreciate you being here in the first place. We absolutely recognize that, your time is valuable. And so we do appreciate it. And for everyone else who has questions about Torii, the platform, I do want to let you know that this is just a taste of the Torii and Okta. If you want to go a little bit deeper to know more about Torii, we actually have a weekly platform demo that's available on Tuesday mornings. I encourage you to sign up for that or to request a personalized demo. We'd be happy to walk you through the platform and show you how it can be useful for your unique context and situation. But that being said, a couple of these questions I wanted to ask. One is about, how do you import license data for applications when you don't support the native integration?
No, that's a great question. So popular feature. So you're able to do that. This is something that we've recently introduced. I'm going to select Figma over here. So in the user's view, you now have the ability to import the user licenses. You can see I've actually done it for this app, right? And, provided that essentially you can download a CSV file or even download an Excel file, convert that to a CSV, and that file contains some baseline information about the users in the app, the licenses that they're assigned, and, optionally, and many of these files will provide something like a last use date or some indication of usage. Then you can download that file, and then you can simply just import it into Torii, and with AI, we will essentially analyze the data and we'll break it up and we'll visualize the licenses for you. Not only here, but then you'll also see it essentially in the licenses view, just like it were an app that supported an integration. So this greatly expands the scope of Torii to being able to visualize this detailed license data, even for apps that may not have an API and they just, allow you to download something like a members list with a file. And it's very easy to do. Requires no code whatsoever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about continuing to bring all that information into one place.
That's correct.
Absolutely. All right, we have another one here. Does Torii have different user roles?
Absolutely. So this also a very popular feature, especially as you get into environments where you have sophisticated security requirements. Torii has a role-based framework where we ship out of the box with 4 standard roles, but you actually have the ability to define your own custom roles and the permissions associated with those roles into the different areas of the product. And essentially you can hide or show different views based on what's there in the left navigation, but within those views you can say that it's either no access, view only, or you can read and write within those views. So this allows you to set up very sophisticated views so that you can have, finance, you can have people from the help desk who may not be able to view the finance data. You can have people that can create the workflows, but you can also have people that can operate on the workflows and not edit the workflows. So those are some common examples.
Yeah.
And these can also be managed through SCIM. So if you have SCIM and Okta, then when you assign a user to Torii, we can automatically map through the user type attribute. We can provision the user directly into a role in Torii.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. I'm going to ask one more question. And this question, I feel like could be another webinar in and of itself. But we had a number of people who were curious about Torii integrating with other ITSM tools, things like Zendesk or Asana or Freshdesk. And some of those questions were asking about how Torii is able to work with these, can it help with ticket creation, other things of that nature. Again, the same idea of extending the capabilities of that core tech stack.
Absolutely. So we do definitely have the ticketing integrations is another very popular thing. So I'm going to go directly into one of the workflows. I'm not going to create a full one, but definitely I will show you a couple of examples here. So popular ticketing systems like Jira, essentially we can obviously do the create users and stuff, but we can create the Jira Cloud. We can create issues in Jira Cloud. And the beauty of that is when you create these tickets, you are also able to leverage data within Torii that is context sensitive to the type of workflow it is. So you can do this for Jira, you can do this for ServiceNow, you can do this for Freshservice. As you can see here, you can do it for Freshservice. We can also do it for ServiceNow. We'll change that. And I believe we also have Zendesk. So we can also manage all of that in Zendesk. Here, we can reassign tickets, we can create tickets. So very easy to integrate directly into the ITSM. And the beauty of it is, as you saw here in this Jira ticket, whether it's a user-centric workflow, a license-centric workflow, contract-centric workflow, we very easily have the ability to kind of share data between the systems. And if you want to go beyond that, there are even examples that we have in the developer community for more sophisticated types of tickets and artifacts that we can create in the ticketing system. But yeah, these are very popular integrations.
Yeah, absolutely. Elevate, give just a little bit of a teaser at the end of that developer community. I know
Yeah.
that's something that's really popular with our users because continuing that theme, it allows them to extend these capabilities in really exciting ways.
Yeah, and it works both ways. I would say I would even close that off. But if you want your ITSM system to come into Torii and pull data out, then that's also, popular because you can leverage, the Torii APIs, and you can, for example, like I've seen examples where ServiceNow reaches into Torii to grab app usage data on a monthly basis for different apps if it's some kind of system of record for audit. So
Mhm.
it can work both ways.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many options, so many ways, like you were saying, so many ways you can use this to your unique use case.
Mhm.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Rajiv. I know we are well over time, but I also just once again wanted to thank everyone for your time and your attention. We really appreciate it. And we hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.